Hey, Christina K here from Write Your Best Book. And today we're going to talk about something a little controversial. Who doesn't love a good controversy? I know I do. So, we're going to talk about book length, okay? We're going to talk about chapter length, word length, or sentence length, all the lengths that you can imagine, word count, etc. Because it's a question, all those questions I get very frequently. How long should my chapters be? How long should my book be? Is it too big? Is it too little? And the answer is not clearly defined when you go online. If you look up how long should my book be, you're going to get varying opinions. So all this is my opinion, my professional opinion based on 10 years of experience working in the publishing industry, working for literary agents, and as an indie author myself. So it's just an opinion, but I feel it's pretty much grounded in a lot of experience. So I'm not going to give you a hard and fast word count, but I'll give you a range that I think is appropriate for different genres and things, but we'll discuss that in a moment. So let's start with the very shortest version, which is sentences. How long should your sentences be? There's a rule of thumb, and again, it's just a guideline that says try to keep your sentences on average to about 33 words. Now, that doesn't mean you can never go over that, and it doesn't mean you can never have a short sentence. You can have a 2-word sentence, by God. But that just helps you to kind of keep pace, make sure that your pacing of your timeline and everything is really concise. And if you keep it to not much more than 33 words, that'll prevent you from having these long, paragraph-long sentences that I've seen so many authors do just because you're trying to cram so much information into one sentence. But you don't want to do that. Clear and concise is the rule of the day. Make sure that whatever you're trying to get across to your reader in that sentence is just one thought per sentence. You know, I personally subscribe to Leonard Elmore's version of the semicolon and say that basically it's useless and that it's only used by people to prove they went to college. I don't know his exact quote, but it's something like that. So I don't use semicolon. I discourage clients from using semicolons, but if you use them, then they should separate 2 independent clauses. Whole nother discussion. But essentially, I just wanted to point out that if you feel like your sentence might be on the long side, you can always go in and highlight it with your cursor and look down if you're in Word anyway. I don't know about other programs, but look down at the bottom left-hand side of your screen. It will pop up your word count for that highlighted section, and it'll tell you this sentence is 54 words long. You know you're too long, most likely. So you can kind of either condense it or you can break it into 2 different, smaller sentences. Okay, paragraphs. How long should a paragraph be? Again, there's no hard and fast rule because this is writing. The writing is kind of, fluid. There's no real hard and fast rule. But a guideline, again, there's the word guideline, is to try to keep it about half a page or less. If you have a paragraph that's an entire page long, most likely you've got too much going on in there. So just try to make sure also that you're breaking your paragraphs when the subject changes or when the character shifts focus, anything like that. Be sure that you're breaking paragraphs. It's a very common mistake I see where authors just go on and on and on when there should be 2 or 3 paragraph breaks in there. So try not to keep your paragraphs too long either. This also helps with pacing. All right, so let's get to chapter length. Chapter length is the same way. There is no hard and fast rule. If anybody tells you that chapters have to be a certain length one way or the other, then they don't know what they're talking about. But I will say that as a guideline for myself as a writer, I try to stick to 10 pages max. Doesn't mean I've never gone over it. I have 12, 13 page chapters, but I never write a 20-page chapter. And there's a reason why. The reason is that your reader's going to lose interest after a while when they keep flipping and keep flipping and keep flipping and it's still the same chapter. Plus, usually if you go much past that, you're probably dragging on and adding too much information that's not really needed. Now, if you're writing literary fiction or maybe even historical fiction, you might have more leeway. Fantasy, you might have more leeway on longer chapters. And again, this is just a rule of thumb to try to keep it to around 10 pages. This will keep your pacing proper and fast the way you want it to be, especially if you're writing something like suspense or thriller. You want to keep that pacing up. But again, you can have a half a page paragraph chapter if you really wanted to. I had a client who did a really great job with his chapters in a thriller, and he had one chapter would be half a page, the next chapter would be 5 pages, then the next chapter would be 2, and it really helped kind of vary the pacing and keep it up. I mean, it really was a good job, I thought. So again, not a hard and fast rule, but maybe use the guideline of about 10 pages as a measuring point of where you might want to consider slowing down and getting to the end of that chapter. And this is not really a chapter length part of the discussion, but just to throw it in there, remember that when you end your chapters, you want to end on a note that forces the reader to flip the page, to the next chapter. All right, so end it with an intriguing comment, a question that's unanswered, a mini cliffhanger, something that just kind of makes the reader go, well, now I got to turn the page and see what's up next. All right, that's chapter length. Now finally, let's end with the big one that I know you're all interested in hearing, which is how long should my book be? Again, I'll repeat for the 5th time, there is no hard and fast rule. However, there's some basic guidelines you can follow. If you submit a book to an agent or a publisher or an editor or whatever, and it's under 50,000, I say under 60, but at least under 50,000, you don't have a novel. You have a novella. If it's in the 40,000, upper 30s to upper 40s, that's a novella, not a novel. If you want to write a true and proper novel, my opinion is that it should be at least 60,000 words, upwards of 100, just depending on your genre. Now, if you have anything less than 30,000, you're talking short fiction, flash fiction, everything else. Now, we're not talking about children's books because obviously they are like 1,000 words or less. But for adult, young adult, new adult, you want to keep it in that range. Now, as far as going too far the other direction, if you go much over 100, 120, and I would only do that with fantasy, then you probably have too big of a book on your hands, and you might want to consider either shortening it, or don't lose hope, you could break it into 2 or 3 shorter books and make it a trilogy or the start of a series. So just because you've written a 200,000 word book, yes, that's too big. You're not going to get most likely an agent or a publisher interested in a 200,000 word debut novel. But again, all hope is not lost. You can split that into 1, 2, 3 separate little novels and make that into a trilogy or the beginning of a series. So don't give up, but I would not submit a 200,000 word or more book to anybody because you probably aren't going to go get very far with that. So, rule of thumb, try to keep your adult novels to around 60 to 100,000 words. It varies depending on genre, which you can find anywhere online. Just look up how long should a fantasy novel be. Yes, you're going to get different opinions, but there should be all in the same range. Now, quickly I'll touch on this. Young adult novels are slightly shorter, but they're still not novella size. It should be at least 50,000 words. Upper 40s, maybe you might be pushing it to upper 60s, 70s. That's a young adult novel. So it's really hard to keep track of all that. There are diagrams you can find online, saved to your computer, that break it down by category and genre. I would encourage you to do that. Basically, all you need to really remember when it comes to book length and word count is try to hit at least 60,000 for an adult novel and try not to go much over 100,000 for an adult novel. Again, if you're writing fantasy, you could probably push it to 120, but that's the exception, not the rule. And that is all the time we have for today, folks. So, agree with me, disagree with me, but that's what I have found just based on my experience. I hope that helps you. And again, I encourage you to look up your genre and your category online and see what there's one more tip I want to share with you. There is a website called Novel Length, I believe it's called. I'll put the link in the show thing on the YouTube channel on this episode. But you can go in and put the title of any book that you're interested in, Game of Thrones, Catcher in the Rye, anything, and put it in there, and it will tell you how many words were in that book. And that's another way that you can gauge if your book is on the right track. That's all the time for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out our website, writeyourbestbook.com. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. We're across all social media at Write Your Best Book. Bye, guys.